Hey, it's Prspktv here. I'm a little bit bored, so I thought I'll record a little tutorial video on how I like to process the Len Collins think break in my liquid drum and bass tracks. There's a little folder here. You can actually find this for free on the internet if you search for the Len Collins think break, but I will include the download link in the description just below this video, so you can grab that for free. Yeah, I'm not doing anything dodgy. This is completely free. I can't actually remember where I found it, but I just googled it one day and I found a little pack of 4 clips, and they sound a little like this. I guess it's just saved us all a little bit of time. We don't have to go through the original record and pick out, what we like the most. It's kind of got quite a lot to work with, actually. Let's get a new project open in Logic. I'm going to be working from my drum and bass template. If anyone's actually interested, I could do a video explaining the what's, whys, and wheres of this template, but I've only been producing for not even a year. I think maybe around 11 months. I've only been producing drum and bass, I should say, for around 11 months or so. That was the release of my first track. So thus far, this is what my project looks like, or my template project looks like. It's usually always changing. I always like to add stuff, take stuff away, maybe replace, certain plugins with a different plugin that I like to use at the moment and things like that. But I digress. Let's just get back to the point of the video. So we're going to use this one that I have already earmarked. This is one that I personally like to use. So we're going to drag and drop that into Logic. I'm going to convert the file because it's recorded at a different sample rate to my template project. And we should be good to go. First thing, obviously, it's quite slow, isn't it? So let's open Flex. Command F is the Logic shortcut for that, just to enable it and open the Flex view. This is the Flex view, if you didn't know. This is the toggle switch to, I guess, arm it on the track. I'm not quite sure what the right word for that would be, but just to switch it on then. Let's try and not overcomplicate anything, just to switch it on. So here would be the different algorithmic methods that Logic will like to, that Logic has the ability to use. In this instance, we don't want to really use polyphonic or monophonic. Slicing and rhythmic tend to add some artifacts which aren't really too great if you want a clean drum break. So in this case, because it is quite slow, what we're going to do is just simply speed it up. So that's the original, but let's just squash that down to fit into a one bar loop, and that's pretty much it. There's the think break. Super simple stuff. That's great. That's fine. Let's close the Flex view for now, because we don't need that anymore. We're already up to key. We're already up to speed. We don't need to mess with that. Would you like to make this a little more interesting? Instead of just a straight kind of jungly, we could change that around a little bit if you wanted to. Let's just change it into a different pattern. The kick should be here, so we can probably get rid of that. It should duplicate here. It's already a lot more funky, in my opinion. But I've just pressed T to open the tool selection menu. I'm going to press G to select the glue tool. Then we can choose all of that audio, and it will ask us to create a new track. So we've glued that together. So now if you wanted to, we could bounce it out as it is. But for those of you using headphones, you may have noticed how wide the sound is. Now, this is drum and bass. Drum and bass is a club-oriented genre of music. It's all about the big club systems, A lot of new producers actually seem to forget that, and they might be applying some kind of lo-fi production techniques, or they're more kind of like ambient, listen at home, sort of like stereo enhancement techniques, which is awesome if done correctly. But a lot of the new kids on the block, myself included, going back to a lot of the whips that I would make back in the day, they were really wide, And sometimes it's nice to have a harsh effect snare, you know, hitting you on both sides of your ears when you're listening in headphones. But in the club, or even if you just, you know, fold everything down to mono, it's going to sound like absolute horse shit. It's going to sound phasey. It might even disappear in some cases. So yeah, we're going to address that now, because as it stands, this sound is super wide. And for dance music, for club music, you want to make sure your drums are as sort of narrow as possible, or at least the punch and the bulk of it is as narrow as possible, to ensure that there's not going to be any kind of strange phase cancelling, or just your sounds effectively just disappearing on those big either mono or dual mono systems in the club. So let's just have a look at Ozone Imager over here. This is a new version actually, Ozone Imager 2. They released that a few months ago. It's a little cleaner, kind of falls in line with their latest Ozone 9 suite. They've updated the graphics a little bit. It's not a huge overhaul, but anyway, let's just have a look. So if you notice how much side information is here, there's nothing down the middle at all. There's absolutely nothing. So if we were to put a utility plugin on this channel, and if we were to fold that down to mono, listen to what happens to the sound. On a club system, if you don't apply the following processing, this right here is what will be coming out of those speakers. It's not very good, is it? DJs will be looking at their tune, and the audience will be thinking, what the hell has happened here? It's an absolute mess. It's diabolical. So let's get rid of the mono for now. In fact, I'm going to leave that as a mono switch. That's what I like to use. You can use a utility plugin, like the one that's built into Logic, or there is also another plugin by, who is it? I haven't used it for a while. Plugin Alliance, I think. Solo. Yes. This is another utility plugin which gives a little more control, but it's basically the same thing. What you want to do, it's kind of strange actually, you want to solo the side channels. So here, and there you go, you got that punch in the middle, it's mono. It will work, which is a bit strange, because usually you have the reverbs and everything on the sides, right? So if you actually solo the middle channel here, you get that really washy thing that we've got with this over here, with our little utility mono toggle. We don't want that. We want the kick and the snare. That sounds crisp, that will translate well. No, let's turn that off. Let's go back to this method. So yeah, we can phase invert by clicking either the left or the right hand signals, and you get a very similar result. It's not as mono. It's not dead down the middle. I mean, you can make that happen by clicking mono, obviously. But if you like a little bit of width on the drums, I'm not quite sure how well this translates to a club system. But you get a little more width. It's not just dead center. It's the same, exactly the same. It's exactly the same. Alright, you could probably use it as it is. We're going to take that one step further. This is something that I don't really see talked about a lot, or at least in the drum and bass tutorials that are online and available right now. If you notice, the top end of the Lynn Collins Think Break is very, very airy. And when it comes to trying to mix that in with your tune, it can become quite cluttered and quite noisy. There's actually two ways to combat that. I'll show you one with stock plugins in Logic. I will do a very similar process using a transient shaper, which I like to use the Transient Master from Native Instruments. That's my go-to. But you can do the same thing with Logic's stock enveloper, which is a really great tool. It's an enveloper, so it's a little bit different to a transient shaper, but you can kind of get a very similar result. Okay, so we'll start with the stock enveloper in Logic first. So let's just have a listen to the sound again. Turn the EQ on. I'll put that after the enveloper and transient shaper. I wouldn't normally do this, but just to give a visual representation. There we are. We've got our EQ open. We've got our enveloper plugin open. Let's just press play and analyze that EQ real quick. So if you can notice, there's actually quite a lot of gas happening around maybe 1 to 5k. It's very, very airy and gassy, which can be problematic when it comes to the mixdown phase of your drum and bass track. But you could try and EQ it, but you lose a lot more content than just the gas and just the airiness, and I suppose the room reverb from the original drum break. So to combat that, there are two ways that I like to do it. You can reduce the gain of the release within Logic's enveloper, and let me show you what that sounds like. You see how much gas has just disappeared from that? And so this is a plug-in bypassed. You see how much snappier that sounds now? Can even get that a lot like this. Basically, I kind of see this as almost a look ahead. So if you see this, kind of like how much you want the release of the sound to be cut off. So this would be sort of like almost a threshold or like a level control. This is how sharp you want the curve to be, or how sharp you want the cutoff to be, sorry. You can actually use this method to isolate drum hits too, which is really cool. Okay, so this is Transient Master. What I love about this Transient Shaper is that there's just 3 controls. Super simple, clean UI, everything a Transient Shaper needs to be. It doesn't have to be super fancy, in my experience, in my opinion. It doesn't have to be super complicated, just something that you can turn on, off, tweak a little bit, and you get the result you want. And another thing I really like is this limiter switch. So if you really want to crank the attack on, let's say, a kick, you're not going to be poking out because this is going to be controlled, which is super cool. Right, so all we'll want to do is pull the sustain down, and you'll instantly notice how much cleaner the sound gets. And we're almost left with the transients exclusively, which is really cool if you're into sampling drum break one hits. But yeah, that will be, I suppose, my first video, I think. Hopefully, it's probably going to sound like horse shit. I'm going to have to redo it all, or at least heavily edit that. But yeah, now you've just created your own Lincoln Instinct break. You've cleaned it up. You've made it mono compatible, and you've learnt how to tame some of the gassiness from that break. I hope this was insightful, and I'll hopefully be making more of these soon. Thank you.